What's going on YouTube? Chronos here, and welcome back to another PSO2 video. So in today's video, we're just gonna kind of do a bit of a repeat. Unfortunately, at least I personally kind of feel like it's a repeat. We're talking about making your 14-star weapons that are part of the collections, or I guess the collection folders that have been releasing for 15-star weapons. Now we'll be talking specifically about the Atlas weapon, the Lumiere weapon, and the Atlas EX, and kind of their overall impact on the quote-unquote meta right now in PSO2. So the reason why these weapons are something that a lot of people have been talking about and pushing towards is mainly because both the Lumiere and the Atlas EX actually combine together to making your 15-star weapon. I'm sorry, I said the Atlas EX. I meant to say the Lumiere and the Atlas combined together to making your Atlas EX. So technically, if you've made either one of those weapons and you haven't made the other, well, first off, you're going to want to make the opposite one for it, because you use both into a weapon together. And I guess I'm going to slow down a little bit and mention kind of how this all works out, because there were a couple things that were missed in the previous video where I just kind of made mine and show you guys the process of me making mine that some people had some questions about. So let's get started. First off, this entire process is going to start with Zeig. Zeig is where we are going to make pretty much all of our best weapons in the game that don't come from drops. So as you can see right now, he can make the Lumiere and the Atlas, along with a few other weapons in between. The Gurren and the Xian, unfortunately, I kind of feel like they're dead on arrival. And you're gonna hear that topic a lot when I say for certain weapons are quote dead on arrival. Essentially, they aren't the best in their category for everything across the board. There are some niche situations that these weapons will be useful in, but it's going to vary depending upon the situation. But some of these weapons are kind of dead on arrival, depending upon where you are in your progression in the game itself. I'll be honest, these were always kind of dead on arrival, even when they came out in JP. So there's probably some one person out there randomly going to say, "Well, Chrono, there's this one situation." It doesn't matter. It doesn't. I don't really pay attention to these, so we're not going to talk about them. If you happen to find one niche situation used for them, I'm happy for you. Feel free to toss it in the comments, but we're mostly going to skip over it. Gurren and Xian were pretty nice, since Xian had access to S1s through 3s, and Gurren just had ridiculous base damage and having the shift and multiplier on top of it that's up on you at all times. It was kind of nice. Basically, you would be able to take advantage of if, say, you personally could not cast shift it yourself, or if a Tekker would cast shift on you, would maintain on you the entire time while you were in the air. Xian would do the same thing with D-Bam, but also had access to S1 through 3, so it's kind of cool in that situation itself. But moving on past that, we're talking mostly about the Atlas and the Lumiere. So these two weapons are two weapons you're going to want to make. Even if your end game isn't going to be these weapons specifically, they're going to be fairly useful for you. Now, I do want to preface this with a bit of a disclaimer. There are weapon categories out currently that have 14 stars that are technically stronger than the 15-star variants that these weapons will upgrade into, just because of their unique potentials as well as the plus potentials that are in the game, that increase their overall damage and their utility past that of what the Atlas EX will be able to use. For example, if you happen to be an extremely lucky bouncer, granted, I don't think there's any bouncers currently that have got this as a drop. If you have, feel free to screenshot it for me and let me, so I can see it. But if you happen to be a bouncer that's picked up a Jupiter Tullus with its plus potential, you can basically skip everything until after. Actually, this is after a light stream, until Liberate comes out, basically. Granted, I'm not sure if it's going to have the same name, Liberate, but because of its plus potential and its unique potential, it's extremely powerful, pretty much dwarfing all these weapons. But if you're not one of those lucky people, then you're probably going to be making an Atlas and an Atlas EX. So what does it take to make an Atlas? What does it take to make an Atlas EX? First off, the Atlas itself requires a Val weapon of the requested type at plus 35, a Chronostone, 999 Gold Nia, 999 Sapphire. Now that's going to change depending upon the weapon type as well. So melee weapons are going to require Gold Nia and Sapphire. Range weapons would require Gold Est and Sapphire. And if we go to tech weapons, I believe it's Gold Grimo and Sapphire. Yeah, Gold Grimo and Sapphire. So always going to have Sapphire as a requirement. That's pretty much staple throughout the entire thing. But it's going to require either Gold Est, Gold Nia, or Gold Grimo. Now, how do we get these? First off, we'll talk about the Val. The Val currently is a drop from the Crimson Fellworm UQ. Now, if you've been hanging around the stream at all, you'll find that I've actually recommended to a lot of people, sell your Val weapons. Sell them right now. Why? because they've already announced on the 14th we will be getting a collection folder for Val weapons, meaning that they'll become easier to get. And usually the next thing I hear afterwards is, yeah, well, you'll need 6 of them. You're absolutely correct, you will need 6 of them. However, the overall value of these Val weapons are going to plummet because people don't pay attention to the grind amount when they're listing things to sell. They just want it to be sold as soon as possible. They think something is useless to them. They want to make the money off it as soon as possible. I'm telling you right now, these are going to drop in price. If you don't believe me, look at the price of a golem weapon on the market itself. Of any of the supernatural weapons itself, or this, I think, yeah, they're called like supernatural monster weapons. Any of these weapons, you'll find a lot of them end up getting posted under the value of the ones that you get from the collection folders. So come next week after the 14th, Val weapons are going to drop in price pretty substantially. Now, if you're not concerned with making money off of them, that's totally fine. If you're someone who's in a place where you have, like, say, a Nemesis weapon that you had from previous patches, in reality, the damage difference isn't humongous to the point where you're actually going to be falling behind by far. You actually should be able to take care of current content relatively safely without forcing yourself into this upgrade super early on. I say if you get lucky, cool. If you want to make some money, sell them. Sell your Val weapons as much as possible for now. Pick them up again next week when people are going to be selling them for nearly probably a fourth of their current price. It's because they're going to be more readily available to people. And you won't have to worry about RNG. But keep in mind the ones from the collection folder will require 6 of them total because they are plus 30. Unless you happen to pick up a one on the cheap that's already plus 35 that happened to get from a drop, then you can take that one and grind it into your plus 30 and it'll push the grind value to plus 35. So now that we got the Val weapon out of order, we can look into the Chronostone. Chronostone's pretty simple. There's 2 ways of getting, actually 3 ways of getting a Chronostone in game right now. Sorry, turn the character. Wanted to be able to see him. So one is just via the mission pass. Now, if you're doing your mission pass normally, right now you shouldn't be able to reach this. I did put some star gems into this because I wanted to make an extra Atlas weapon for the previous video, but once you get up to 30, there's a Chronostone right there. Getting your Val weapon to plus 35 will unlock a title. You can head over to the title counter. What is that for? Oh, for unlocking all the skills on Dark Blast. Okay. I believe the one we're looking for is not that one. It should be around here somewhere. Where was it? I can't remember exactly where the title was. It might be under items. Yeah, here we go. Under items, Renovator. After you get your Val weapon to plus 35, you get a title for a Chronostone. That's 2 ways. So either getting your Val weapon to plus 35, which is pretty much like a free one, essentially. Getting your Val weapon up to plus 35 gets you a Chronostone, and also finishing your mission pass, which I believe if you're doing standard, you should be able to finish next week, gets you another Chronostone. If you've been collecting title rewards, getting up to 600 titles gets you a Chronostone as well. So that's 3 total. And later, when the story quests, when we get towards the end of the stories for episode 5, you will be able to get another Chronostone from a title from completing story stuff. So that's 4 total. Actually, I think it's either a title or it just is a reward for completing the story for episode 5 stuff. Currently, it's not in the game yet, but that'll be your 4th available Chronostone. So that's 4 Chronostones you'll be able to get to make 4 Atlas weapons. So we've got the Chronostone, we have our Atlas plus 35. All we need left now is the materials. So the materials are actually pretty easy to get, and you probably have noticed on the market some things have changed recently. And head back to our room to show you guys a couple things. So you need the Gold Nia, or the Gold Remo, or the Gold Est, and the Sapphire. So depending upon the weapon type that you need, all you've got to do, break down 12 stars. Now, because of this, the price on 12 stars you'll find has gone up. Actually, that's probably the cheapest one on the market right now, is 39k. If I cared that much about it, I'd probably buy it and break it down myself. But you'll find that most 12 stars are going above 40k to 50k right now, just because people bought out a bunch of them to break down to then upgrade the materials. And if you're someone who's been breaking down 12 stars or has saved them, I mean, granted, we get tons of them from urgent quests, like all the time. It's insane how many we've gotten, to the point where I've spent like close to an hour after each stream just breaking down 12 stars. Just because of running triggers or just doing the urgent quests, whatever it happens to be, just have tons and tons of them. But you'll be perceptive in realizing, if we go over to dismantling, This doesn't give us Gold Nia. This is giving us Silv Nia and Silvdest and Silveremo. We'll break these three down. We got the Sapphire, which is cool, but we only got Silv Nia, Silvdest, and Silveremo. How do we get the gold versions of that? Well, we pop over to the shopping plaza. There's been a new vendor that's been added. Now, you crafters out there probably might have noticed this vendor earlier.
Welcome.
But this vendor, we'll head over here, go to Craft Shop 1. And if we go down to Gold Nia, Goldest, and Silveremo, you'll find that they have an upscale value. Every 10 gives you 1. So out of the 81 that I have, I'll get 8.
Thank you very much.
And the same thing here.
Thank you very much.
And the same thing here.
Thank you very much.
That does mean you're going to need a lot of these materials. Now, you have the alternative of just going to the market board and buying them. However, because everyone's making these weapons right now and they're trying to make multiples, like crazy numbers of amounts of them. Let me see really quick. I think it's Goldest that's selling for the most. Yeah, Goldest is used to make range weapons, and for some reason that's selling for the most right now. It's selling for 12k a piece. Silveremo is about 6k a piece right now, and Goldest. Oh no, sorry, Gold Nia. Selling for about 9k roughly. So let's take a look if you were a ranged player and you wanted to make, or how much it's going to cost you. So let's say 13k. Right now it's 13 mil to make your weapon. And yes, it's going to be that amount for quite some time, because technically you need these materials not only to make the weapon, but to category change the weapon itself. And depending upon what weapon you actually want to make personally, you may have to category change it. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and go through. We've got our weapon, right? So our Atlas. We've got our weapon, we've got our Chronostone, we have all of our materials. What happens next? First off, make sure the weapon isn't locked. It does need to be plus 35 like it mentions. You'll select the weapon, and it'll give you a drop down of all of the items. You'll select the item itself, the Chronostone, the Gold Nia, and the Sapphire. You exchange it, and you're good to go. It will retain whatever you had on the Val weapon itself. Keep that in mind. That means it's elemental cap, which it's a drop, so it should always be 60. It's going to be its grind cap, which is a plus 35 weapon, so it's going to be plus 35. It's going to contain any augments it has, and of course the owner binding, which I don't know why they even mentioned that. Of course it has your owner binding because it's bound to you anyway if you got it as a drop, but whatever. Well, I guess if you got it as a drop, it's not bound to you yet, but if you bought it, it is bound to you, so either way. But the long story short is it retains everything that you had on it beforehand. So this is how you technically just make your Atlas weapon itself. Now, a little bit of planning can go into this. So let's say we'll take my Atlas weapon as an example. And you can look back at my previous video. I'll try to link that in the video description. The Atlas weapon I'm using Aggressive Will and Lifesteal on it. Why? Well, because this is a typo. This is just 2% damage dealt in general, not absorbs 2% damage dealt. And the S4 on this weapon usually, I'm not a huge fan of personally. Just because it eats up your right ring slot if you want to use it. And to be honest, I think it's kind of disjointed from the whole game itself. Granted, it is strong used in the right way, but I think it's just kind of dumb personally. But the S4 for here is Transmutation Circle. When a weapon, it changes the weapon's element based on the guard type ring that you have equipped. Being on element is a lot of damage, yes, but I'd much rather just have another weapon and swap to it instead. Instead of eating up my entire right ring slot and making the class, or making my specific class, the way I'm playing this character, a bit more annoying to play. So I personally put Lifesteal on it and just have multiple weapons. So this S4 is fairly nice to have. It does let us play a bit more of a aggressive play style. So in situations where I'd usually back off, try to reheal, or maybe, not check an attack here or there, or maybe just not, believe that I'd be okay, I can do that and know that me being offensive is also giving me healing back. So that's pretty nice. So how did I decide to make this weapon with this S4 being different? You can't buy S4s off the market, so because you can't buy Atlas weapons off the market. So how do I set this up? Well, it actually comes from the S4 from a gun slash. So what I did originally was Actually, it's kind of a twofer, right? So not only does the S1 I want come from the gun slash, but the S4 I wanted came from the gun slash as well, or gun blade if we're playing global, right? So technically we're playing global, so gun blade. We made a Val gun blade. We increased it to plus 35, and because the Val gun blade, its SAF or its special ability factor. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and pull it up really quick, just because I want to make sure we can see it, and I'm just not spouting stuff off. You guys can see this in real time. If we head over to gun blades, Val Gunblade, Val Gunblade, Val Gunblade. Here we go. Val as its S1 is aggressive will, which we did want. We want aggressive will on our weapon itself. Of course, the wiki has the proper translation for this. It boosts damage by 2%. So what we did was we took a Val Gunblade. We did what's called, I call it just a junk augment. Essentially, we just grabbed anything really just to augment this weapon. Because it was plus 35, it gave us aggressive will as an option. If you're not sure of how special ability factors work, essentially when you get a weapon to plus 35, you unlock its special ability factor. Anytime you augment that weapon, it will have its special ability factor as an option, or SAF for short. You can also use the weapon as fodder, or as something that you're going to be using when you're setting up your weapon itself, to transfer the special ability factor onto other weapons. It only works, in this case, this is an S grade ability that will only work with other weapons that have S grade abilities. But because we want this, and we do want to turn this into into an Atlas Gunblade, we went ahead and just grabbed two junk weapons, didn't matter what, put this at plus 35, did a junk augment, and it gave us the ability, or gave us the option for aggressive will. We slapped aggressive will on. We put on two more an S2 and an S3 that we wanted in our weapon itself. I'll go into that later. They were kind of expensive, but I knew I was going to use them for a long time, so I really didn't care too much. But essentially, we put on an S2 and S3 that we wanted to use, and then we upgraded the weapon to an Atlas weapon. Now, at this point, it was upgraded, but it only had an S1, 2, and 3. So we just repeated the steps we did beforehand. We did another junk augment on it. We just grabbed whatever. We went ahead and chose the S1, the S2, and the S3. And because this Atlas weapon now, its SAF is this S4, the S4 was available for us. So now we could pick the S4 as an option. And now we have an S1, 2, 3, and 4. Getting not only the S1 that we wanted from here beforehand, but the S4 from here as well. And the cool thing about special or S grade augments are they are always 100%, even when upslotting. So if I wanted to upslot this at the same time, I could have. Now, if you're curious about how augmenting works, I recommend reviewing an actual augmenting video. I have one where I do an actual augment on the channel and kind of show how it works out. But where S grade augments are different they're always 100%. So it's fairly easy to do this process. Now, just because you're stuck without a weapon that had S grade augments doesn't mean that you can't put S grade augments on your weapon. You don't have to augment it to do that. In this situation, we did the augments just because it had the SAF we wanted, so we took advantage of that. We basically took the Val weapon, we added the S1 by doing just a junk augment because it was plus 35 and it was the SAF. We upgraded into the Atlas weapon, did it again, got the S4 we wanted. But let's say we didn't have the S2 and the S3 we wanted on the weapon itself, or let's say we wanted to add it to the weapon before we upgraded. How did I do that? Well, what you'll find, I don't know why I'm talking to Doo-Doo, I probably should pick a different block, but what you'll find is there's a new option here called Transfer S grade Augment. You can now select two weapons that have S grade augments on them, S grade augment slots, and move the S grade augments around. It is a fairly expensive process. It costs about 1.9 mil, I believe. I'm not sure if it depends on the number of S grade augments you're working with, but it's always been around 1 mil for me, either between 1 to 2 mil, but I mostly don't pay that much attention to it. So let's take a look at an example of what that looks like. So I've selected two weapons, right? Selected my 8 slot as my base and selected my 3 slot invade weapon as my secondary. So as you can see, I have access to every S grade augment that's available between both weapons, right? So let's say I wanted Lucent Grace from my invade weapon, and I wanted the other Lucent Grace from my invade weapon, but then I want to take Precision Will. Well, notice that these are both S3s, so I can't have both of them together. Only one slot for an S3, so I can only use one or the other. So take this S2 Precision Will, Lifesteal, and then fill in the rest of the slots. So we've got Aggressive Will and Precision Will still left, right? So go to the next item. Well, those are the two that's left, and Lucky Charm's my last one that's here. Now, if we take a look at what we have left, the first item we selected was our Atlas. We've now taken the 2 augments off of here and put them onto here, and then taken the 2 augments that were here and put them onto here. So basically we swapped them between the 2. It costs 1.9 mil if I do this. I'm not going to go through with this. I don't want to. It's just going to be a waste basically of nearly 4 mil. But you can kind of see that you can basically do this with any of them. Now, there is one other situation you could run into. So for example, say that we weren't moving augments back and forth between the 2. So for example, let's say this didn't have an S2 or an S3. I'm sorry, an S1 or an S2 slot. We would select all the augments we want on here, but of course they would overwrite something, right? Because we would be using up those slots. So say this was an 8 slot, it was only 2, like an S1 and S2. I'm sorry, an S1 and S4, and there was 2 junk augments here in this slot instead. And I was pulling over the 2 augments from my other weapon. Well, I'd have 2 augments left over. What happens is those augments just get tossed out. It'll tell you that, hey, you're not selecting these 2 augments, they're going to get tossed out. So you go ahead and choose yes, move on to the next weapon, and this weapon, you won't have any S grade augments because of course there are none left. You've already selected them all for the first weapon. What'll happen is it'll say, hey, look, you've only selected 1, because it'll actually let you continue if there's only 1 augment here to select. It'll tell you, hey, the other 2 slots are going to be lost. You continue, and then what happens is the weapon down slots automatically, and the other augments that are left over are lost. So it's really not a huge deal, but basically you can just transfer whatever augment you want from one weapon to the next using that system itself. And it lets you set up your weapon guaranteed. And it's super easy to do in this sort of way. It can get complicated. You can mess around with it. There are some people, I know one nice little trick that you can do is if you were to, for example, take the Val Gunblade and keep the Val Gunblade at plus 35, you can consistently transfer Aggressive Will onto other weapons that have an S1 slot available to it, and then keep reaffixing the Val Gunblade over and over again. Because it's an SAF that's available for that weapon, it'll just keep popping up. And every time you move it over onto another weapon, of course, that slot is open, then you reaffix it again, put the S1 back on it, so on and so forth. Hopefully that made sense. I know it's kind of a weird way of doing it, and without specifically showing you guys, it's kind of difficult to explain, but it's not something that I'd recommend for everyone anyway, and anyone who did understand what I just said, they're probably already doing this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But as far as making your weapon, essentially that's how you set it up, so that gets that taken care of. That's one of 2 weapons, and we're 22 minutes in. Hopefully the second weapon doesn't take nearly as long. Let's look at Lumiere. Lumiere is a little different. Has no requirements of any materials. It's just 3 plus 35 weapons. Chevelle, a Golem, and a Judas. So how do we get these taken care of? First off, our Judas weapon is going to be purchased with Rising Weapon Badge 4s. Now you are given enough Rising Weapon Badge 4s to buy enough Judas weapons from the Rising Weapon Badge shop. They're only 50 a piece, 300 badges total. If you're doing your mission pass, and I believe you get 2 classes to 75, you're provided a total of like 400 and almost 500. I think it's either between 400 and 500. I can't remember exactly how many. Basically, you're provided enough to make your Lumiere weapon. So you buy the 6 you need from here. Or if you were lucky and you got a Judas weapon as a drop from doing Buster quests, or if you happen to just want to throw money at the problem, you can buy them off of the market at plus 35 already, get your Judas and put it at plus 35. Fairly simple there. Next, you're going to need your Golem weapon. Now, the Golem weapons are going to come from collection folders. In case you don't know how collection folders work, talk to Prin, ask for a collection folder, they're right here. You would grab the collection folder itself, claim the sheet. Of course, I can't because I've already claimed this a while ago. But you claim the sheet. All you have to do is build this bar. The bar is built by killing enemies of any level of this type. Supernatural enemy. Basically, do Buster quests. As long as you basically stack up as much RDR as you possibly can get. Do Buster quests. This completes fairly quickly if you're up to grade 3 main match advanced. Lower matches, of course, give you less, but eventually you'll build them up and you'll get it taken care of. Now, because this is from a collection folder, these are plus 30, meaning you'll need a total of 6 of them. However, these drop fairly often and they're usually pretty cheap on the market. I picked up mine for like 300k and it was already a plus 35. So there's 2 ways of grabbing it. Either one works fine. You need to get to plus 35 and you're golden. After getting the weapon to plus 35, you are going to need to upgrade that weapon. So if we take a look at Sword, we can see here that this has an upgraded version. So the Golem Bluffs upgrades into the Golem Grifoil. You do need 50 of these Malleus stones. These stones come only from Buster quests, I believe. Wait. Actually, I think they only come from Dragon Urgent Quest. I think they're only coming from the Dragon Urgent Quest. That's right. People are thinking it's supposed to come from Buster Quest, but no, it does not come from Buster Quest. Only from the Dragon Urgent Quest, or you can purchase them with badges. So Dragon Urgent Quest drops them not super often, I believe, but I believe you can also purchase them from with badges. If I can menu properly, with the Rising Weapon badges, they're at the bottom here. You can purchase them with badges as well. Of course, you're given just enough to cover the 50 that you'll need. So get your Rising Weapon badge 4s, get your stones, upgrade that weapon, plus 35. And then finally, you will need a Chevelle weapon, not the car, but the weapon in game. So you need a Chevelle weapon. To get one of these, pretty simple. There's a collection folder. The Avilda weapons. Same as before, you can pick it up. The collection folder is completed via Buster quests. Again, it's a fairly simple collection folder. Super easy. If you luck out and just get this as a drop, like the Nox weapon as a drop, then it auto completes the collection folder for you. And as always, these are plus 30.
Goodbye.
We'll go into collection folders in depth if necessary, but they're pretty self-explanatory. You get the collection folder. You'll then need to upgrade these weapons twice. So the Chevelle will upgrade into this Clesis, which will, I'm sorry, the Avilda will upgrade into the Clesis weapon, which will require 60 Clesis boosters. And then it'll upgrade into Chevelle, which also requires Chevelle boosters. These come from different versions of the Buster Quest, respectively. Basically, just Buster Quest. It's fairly easy to do. It's fairly straightforward. I mean, some people find it mind-numbing. I find it pretty relaxing to do personally. I guess it's because I was doing it on Hero at the time. But pretty nice to get this taken care of. I mean, I have tons of these boosters. I've got like 60 Chevelle boosters right here. I have, I think, 100 and some change. Yeah, almost 200 Clesis boosters right here. So really easy to get that taken care of. Get your weapon upgraded all the way to Chevelle. And after you've taken care of all 3 of those weapons to plus 35, so you've gotten your Chevelle weapon, you've got your Golem weapon, and you have your Judas weapon, you can make your Lumiere weapon. Granted, I don't have one right now. I already made one earlier. Actually, do I have the stuff to make one? I don't think I do on me. No, I don't. Okay, I haven't put my stuff, so I grabbed the base materials. I don't have the stuff to make it right now. But basically, all you're going to do is put all 3 of these weapons together. After you've selected all 3 weapons, the next thing you're going to see is it's going to ask you to pick a base. The base is what it's going to base the next weapon that you have on. So say you have one of these weapons that's the highest slottage or the correct element, whatever of those 2 you choose, you pick that as your base. And it will base the upgrade version of the weapon on that. So say one of your weapons is light and it's like, I don't know, 7 slot, go with that instead. If you happen to see one of these 3 base weapons that you can purchase off the market fairly inexpensive and it's the proper element and has high slottage, pick up that weapon on your purchase. That way you can use it as part of your base when you're upgrading. Normally when you upgrade a weapon and there's only one weapon as a part of that upgrade process, it will automatically use, of course, the base weapon as its base itself. But if there's multiple weapons that are used as a part of the upgrade process, it will ask you to choose a base. So after we've gotten our Lumiere and we've gotten our Atlas, now granted I say when because we're not 100% sure if this is going to be next week, but when the Atlas EX comes out, the only thing you're going to need is an Atlas weapon and a Lumiere weapon plus some X cubes. I believe it was 400 if I remember correctly. But those 2 plus X cubes to make your Atlas EX. And that's it. You've got a 15 star. All that together. So when people tell you, hey, what should I be working on? Make one of these 2 weapons. Actually make both of them. Work on making one first. That way you have a decently strong weapon to use. In most cases, it's the Atlas weapon because of its S1 through 4 options. And then work on making the Lumiere as its counterpart to then make your 15 star when it releases. But that's pretty much it. That's about as much detail as I can go into about these weapons itself. Hopefully that covers every aspect of what people were looking for. Again, I know this video is a bit longer, but this was basically a request about how to make your weapon, what to look for, why I've recommended over and over again not to stress horrifically about weapons themselves. They've made all this a collection folder. They've literally already said they're going to be making Val weapons into a collection folder that's coming up on the 14th. This is not new news. I know a lot of people don't know this, but this is already announced. That was at the very bottom of the same article that announced the first 2 collection folders, and it's literally titled as 15-star materials collection folder number 3. So cannot be any more straightforward than that. Anyway, guys, if you have any questions about this process itself, feel free to toss in the comments below, or any tips you guys might have. I will be going over quite a few things coming up fairly soon. This is one of the videos that I said I will be making in my Discord. If you guys have been paying attention to that I'm sacrificing a stream for. I've got a few videos I actually want to make and want to be a little bit more on top of YouTube. I do apologize. I've been a little bit slack, falling behind on a few things that should be already out. I want to get those taken care of as soon as possible. But a like on the video is always appreciated. It absolves you half of your ad block guilt. The other half is resolved by subscribing. Both are completely free and they help me out a ton. If you want to be notified of our videos, go ahead and make sure you click that notification icon, the bell as you will, to be up to date with our videos, or whenever I post any community posts. If that's not really your jam, you can always join us over on Discord or follow me over on Twitter. Wow, on Twitter to keep up with any notifications I post there. Those are always where I post the live streams if that's more of your thing. But thanks for following me on this one, guys. Take care. Peace out.